The ballroom of the Beverly Hills Hotel sparkled under crystal chandeliers that Saturday evening. Women in elegant gowns and men in sharp tuxedos filled every corner of the massive space. This wasn't just another fancy party. This was the annual Children's Hospital Charity Gala, where Hollywood's biggest names came together to raise money for kids who needed medical care they couldn't afford. Waiters moved smoothly through the crowd carrying trays of champagne and appetizers. Soft classical music played in the background, barely audible over the sound of laughter and conversation. Everyone who was anyone had shown up tonight. Movie stars chatted with directors. Business moguls shook hands with athletes. The energy in the room buzzed with excitement and wealth. Near the center of it all stood Ronda Rousey, looking slightly uncomfortable in her floor-length navy blue dress. She was used to gym clothes and fighting gear, not designer gowns and high heels. But she'd been invited as a special guest, and she couldn't say no to helping sick children. She smiled politely as people approached her, asking for photos and telling her how much they admired her fighting career. "You were incredible in the octagon," one man said enthusiastically. "My son watches your fights all the time." "Thank you," Ronda replied warmly, though she'd heard similar comments 100 times before. She appreciated the support, but sometimes she wished people could see beyond the fighter. She was more than just someone who threw punches for a living. On the opposite side of the room, an elderly man with silver hair and piercing blue eyes surveyed the crowd. This was Vladimir Petrov, arguably the greatest living pianist in the world. At 78 years old, he'd performed in every major concert hall from Carnegie to the Royal Albert. His fingers had touched the keys of pianos for kings, presidents, and millions of ordinary people who'd been moved to tears by his music. Tonight, Vladimir wore a perfectly tailored black suit with a silk burgundy pocket square. His posture remained straight despite his age, and his eyes held a sharpness that seemed to look right through people. He'd come tonight not just to support the charity, but because the organizers had promised him access to a 1923 Steinway grand piano that once belonged to a famous composer. He never could resist a historic instrument. The evening moved forward with speeches and presentations. The hospital director talked about all the good work being done. A young girl who'd survived cancer sang a beautiful song that made many guests wipe away tears. Then the auction began, with expensive items going for even more expensive prices. A vacation package to Bali sold for $50,000. A signed guitar from a rock legend went for $75,000. After the auction ended, the organizers announced a special surprise. Vladimir Petrov would perform a short piece on the historic Steinway piano. The crowd erupted in applause as spotlight operators scrambled to illuminate the piano at the far end of the ballroom. Vladimir walked slowly to the piano, acknowledging the applause with a slight nod. He sat at the bench, adjusted his position, and placed his fingers on the keys. Then he began to play. The room fell completely silent. His fingers moved across the keys with the grace of someone who'd spent 70 years mastering their craft. The music that poured from the piano seemed almost impossible. It was both powerful and delicate, loud and soft, joyful and sorrowful all at once. People forgot about their drinks, their conversations, their phones. They simply listened. Ronda found herself captivated. She'd heard classical music before, of course, but never like this. Never this close, this real, this alive. The music seemed to reach inside her chest and squeeze her heart. She felt emotions she couldn't name, memories she'd forgotten, dreams she'd given up on. It was almost too much. When Vladimir finished, the applause was deafening. People stood, cheering and clapping until their hands hurt. Vladimir stood and bowed, then raised his hand for silence. The crowd quieted, curious about what he might say. "Thank you," Vladimir said, his accent giving his words a musical quality. "But I did not come here tonight just to play for you. I came here with a different purpose." The crowd murmured with interest. What could the great maestro want? "Music," Vladimir continued, "is not something that belongs only to musicians. It belongs to everyone. It lives inside all of us, waiting to be discovered. Tonight, I want to prove this to you." He scanned the room slowly, his eyes moving from face to face. People shifted nervously, hoping they wouldn't be called upon. Then his gaze stopped. He was looking directly at Ronda. "You," he said, pointing at her. "The fighter. Come here." Ronda's eyes widened. She looked around, hoping he meant someone else, but no. He was definitely pointing at her. The crowd turned to look, and suddenly hundreds of eyes were on her face. "Me?" she asked, her voice barely carrying across the room. "Yes, you. Come, play the piano for us." Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. This had to be a joke. Ronda Rousey, the woman who'd made grown men tap out in the UFC playing classical piano. Impossible. Ronda shook her head. "I don't play piano. I'm a fighter, not a musician." "Come," Vladimir insisted, his voice gentle but firm. "Trust me." "I really can't," Ronda said, feeling her face flush with embarrassment. "I've never even touched a piano before." "Then tonight will be your first time. Come." The crowd began to murmur louder. Some people looked uncomfortable, feeling bad for Ronda. Others seemed amused, curious to see how this would play out. A few pulled out their phones, ready to record whatever happened next. Ronda felt trapped. She could handle getting punched in the face. She could handle brutal training sessions and tough opponents. But this? Being asked to humiliate herself in front of hundreds of wealthy, important people? This was a different kind of challenge. Vladimir continued to stand by the piano, waiting patiently. His expression held no mockery, no joke. He looked completely serious, as if he genuinely believed she could do this impossible thing. "Please," he said softly, but the microphone caught his word and carried it through the entire ballroom. "I would not ask if I did not see something in you. Give me 5 minutes. If I am wrong, you may leave and I will apologize. But I am not wrong." Something in his voice made Ronda pause. She'd built her entire career on accepting challenges, on proving people wrong, on doing things others said couldn't be done. Could she really back down now in front of all these people? She took a deep breath and started walking toward the piano. Her heels clicked against the marble floor, each step feeling like a mile. The crowd parted to let her through, everyone watching, everyone waiting to see what would happen next. As she reached the piano, she looked at Vladimir. Up close, she could see the wisdom in his eyes, the confidence in his slight smile. He believed in something she couldn't see yet. "I really don't know what I'm doing," she whispered to him. "Good," he whispered back. "That is when the magic happens." He gestured to the piano bench. Ronda sat down slowly, her hands trembling slightly. She looked at the keys stretching out before her, black and white, 88 of them, each one a mystery. The room behind her had gone completely silent. She could feel every single person watching her, waiting for her to fail or succeed or just do something. Vladimir leaned close to her ear. "Close your eyes," he said softly, "and listen to what I tell you." Ronda closed her eyes as Vladimir had instructed. Her heart pounded so hard she was sure everyone in the ballroom could hear it. She'd fought in front of thousands of screaming fans before, but somehow this felt more terrifying. In a fight, she knew what to do. Her body understood violence, understood competition. But this was completely foreign territory. "Keep your eyes closed," Vladimir said quietly beside her. "Good. Now tell me something. When you fight, what do you think about?" The question surprised her. "I don't think," she answered honestly. "I just feel. I react. My body knows what to do." "Exactly," Vladimir said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. "Music is the same. It is not about thinking. It is about feeling. Now I want you to remember something for me. Think of the happiest moment in your childhood. Can you do that?" Ronda's mind drifted back through the years. She was 7 years old, sitting on her mother's lap after winning her first judo tournament. Her mother's arms wrapped around her, telling her how proud she was. The memory filled her chest with warmth. "I have it," Ronda whispered. "Good. Hold that feeling. Now I'm going to place your hands on the keys. Do not open your eyes." She felt Vladimir's weathered hands gently lift her right hand. He positioned, her fingers on the smooth keys, adjusting each one carefully. Then he did the same with her left hand. The keys felt cool under her fingertips, solid and real. "Your right index finger is on a key called C," Vladimir explained. "You do not need to remember the name. Just remember the feeling. Now, I want you to press that key, gently, like you are touching something precious." Ronda pressed down. A single clear note rang out through the silent ballroom. It hung in the air, pure and simple. "Beautiful," Vladimir said. "That note is yours now. You created that sound. Nobody else in this room, just you. How does it feel?" "Strange," Ronda admitted, "but not bad. Now press the key next to it with your middle finger." She did. Another note, slightly higher. And the next one. Another note. Then another. Vladimir guided her through a simple pattern, just 5 notes going up and then back down. Up and down, up and down. After the 3rd time, Ronda found her fingers remembering the pattern on their own. "Keep going," Vladimir encouraged. "But now think about that happy memory again. Let it fill your fingers." Something strange began to happen. As Ronda replayed the memory of her mother's embrace, her fingers seemed to respond. The notes came out softer, gentler, more tender. She wasn't just pressing keys anymore. She was expressing something. "Yes," Vladimir said. "Yes, you feel it now, don't you?" Ronda nodded, afraid to speak and break whatever spell was forming. "Now I will show you something with your left hand. Keep your right hand playing that pattern." While her right hand continued the simple up and down melody, Vladimir positioned her left hand lower on the keyboard. He had her press 3 keys at once. The sound that came out made Ronda gasp. It was richer, fuller, like the difference between hearing one voice and hearing a choir. The combination of her right-hand melody and her left-hand chord created something that sounded almost real, almost like actual music. "Do not stop," Vladimir said. "I am going to step away now. You are playing alone." Panic fluttered in Ronda's chest, but she forced it down. She'd faced that panic before in the seconds before a fight started. She knew how to breathe through it, how to let her training take over. Except this time she didn't have training. She just had this moment, these keys, and a strange old man who believed she could do something impossible. She kept playing. The simple pattern continued, right hand dancing up and down, left hand providing a foundation. It wasn't complicated. A child could probably learn it in an hour. But to Ronda, it felt like performing surgery or landing a plane. It required every bit of her focus. "Now," Vladimir's voice came from somewhere behind her. "Think of a sad memory, something that hurt you." Ronda's fingers faltered for a moment. She thought about losses in the octagon, about injuries, about relationships that fell apart. She thought about the times she'd felt completely alone, completely defeated. The notes coming from her fingers changed. They became heavier, slower, more deliberate. Several people in the audience shifted, surprised by the change in tone. Even playing just 5 simple notes, Ronda had somehow managed to convey a different emotion. "You see?" Vladimir said, his voice filled with wonder. "You see what you can do? This is not about technical skill. This is about truth. This is about being human. And you, Ronda Rousey, you are very human. Your whole life you have expressed yourself through fighting. But music is another language. And you are speaking it right now." Tears formed behind Ronda's closed eyelids. She didn't understand why she was crying. Maybe it was the stress, maybe it was the beauty of what Vladimir was saying. Maybe it was the shock of discovering she could create something beautiful instead of just destroying opponents. "Open your eyes," Vladimir said gently. Ronda opened them and looked down at her hands, still moving across the keys. She watched her fingers press down and release, press down and release. These were the same hands that had thrown championship-winning punches. The same hands that had made opponents submit. Now they were making music. She looked up at the audience. Hundreds of faces stared back at her. But they weren't laughing or mocking. They were captivated. Some people had their hands over their mouths. Others had tears in their eyes. Everyone seemed to be holding their breath. Vladimir returned to her side. "Now I am going to teach you one more thing. A simple ending. Then you will play everything together, and you will give these people a gift they did not know they needed." He showed her how to end the pattern, how to slow down the notes, how to press the final chord and let it ring out into silence. Ronda practiced it twice, her confidence growing with each repetition. "You are ready," Vladimir said. "Play it from the beginning." all the way through. And this time, do not think about happy or sad. Think about strength. Think about every challenge you have overcome. Think about every time someone told you that you could not do something and you proved them wrong. Play that. Ronda positioned her hands back at the starting position. She took a deep breath, the same kind of breath she took before entering the octagon. Then she began to play. The simple melody filled the ballroom once again, but this time it was different. This time Ronda played it with purpose, with power, with the same determination she brought to everything in her life. The notes weren't perfect. Her timing wavered occasionally. A few times she hit wrong keys and had to correct, but none of that mattered. What mattered was the raw authenticity pouring from the piano. What mattered was watching someone discover a part of themselves they never knew existed. What mattered was the courage it took to try something new in front of hundreds of strangers. Vladimir stood beside the piano, watching Ronda play his simple composition. Tears rolled down his wrinkled cheeks. In all his years of teaching, in all his years of performing, he had never felt more proud than he did in this moment. Ronda reached the ending he'd taught her. She slowed the notes down, building to the final chord. Then she pressed all the keys together, letting the sound swell and fill every corner of the enormous room. The chord hung in the air, vibrating alive, refusing to die, and then, slowly, it began to fade into silence. The silence that followed the final chord felt alive. It stretched across the ballroom like a living thing, wrapping around every person in the room. For 5 long seconds, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Nobody dared break whatever magic had just happened. Ronda sat frozen at the piano, her hands still resting on the keys. She stared at her fingers like they belonged to someone else. Had she really just done that? Had she actually played music in front of all these people? Her mind struggled to process what had just happened. Then someone started clapping. It was a single pair of hands at first, slow and deliberate. Then another person joined. Then another. Within seconds, the entire ballroom erupted into thunderous applause. People weren't just clapping politely like they did at fancy events. They were on their feet, some shouting, some wiping tears from their faces. All of them applauding like they'd just witnessed something truly extraordinary. Ronda turned on the piano bench, shocked by the reaction. A woman in a red dress near the front was crying openly, not bothering to hide her tears. A man in his 60s stood with his hands raised above his head, clapping so hard his face turned red. Young people pulled out their phones, recording the standing ovation. The noise level was incredible, almost overwhelming. Vladimir placed his hand on Ronda's shoulder. When she looked up at him, she saw that the old maestro was crying too. His blue eyes sparkled with moisture and his lined face held an expression of pure joy. "Do you understand what you just did?" he asked, his voice barely audible over the applause. Ronda shook her head. "I just played some notes. It was simple. Nothing special." "No," Vladimir said firmly. "You did something that most trained musicians never achieve. You played with complete honesty. Every note carried real emotion. People did not hear technique. They heard truth. They heard your soul." The applause continued for what felt like forever. Ronda stood up from the piano bench, unsure what to do. Should she bow? Should she wave? In the octagon, she always knew how to react to victory, but this wasn't a fight. This was something entirely different. Vladimir gently took her hand and raised it high like a referee declaring a winner. The crowd roared even louder. Cameras flashed. People cheered. Ronda felt dizzy, overwhelmed by the intensity of it all. Finally, after what must have been 2 full minutes, the applause began to fade. People slowly returned to their seats, still buzzing with excitement. Conversations broke out everywhere, everyone wanting to talk about what they'd just witnessed. "That was incredible," a woman said to her husband near the back. "I've been to hundreds of concerts and I've never felt anything like that." "Did you see her face?" someone else said. She had no idea she could do that. It was completely real. A famous movie director stood with a group of actors, shaking his head in amazement. "That's what I try to capture in films," he said. That moment of genuine discovery. That raw emotion. But you can't fake that. You can't act that. What we just saw was completely authentic. Vladimir led Ronda away from the piano, giving her space to collect herself. They stood near a tall window overlooking the hotel gardens, away from the crowd. Ronda's hands were shaking. She pressed them together, trying to make them stop. I don't understand what happened, she said quietly. I just followed your instructions. I pressed the keys you told me to press. You did much more than that, Vladimir replied. You trusted me. You trusted yourself. And you let yourself be vulnerable in front of all these people. That takes more courage than any fight. Ronda thought about that. He was right. In the octagon, she wore armor of confidence and aggression. She built walls around herself, made herself seem invincible. But at that piano, she had no walls. She had been completely exposed, completely open, and somehow that had created something beautiful. I have a story to tell you, Vladimir said, settling into a chair near the window. Please sit. Ronda sat across from him, grateful for the chance to calm down. When I was a boy in Russia, Vladimir began, my grandmother lived with us. She was a hard woman, made tough by difficult times. She worked in a factory, raised 5 children alone after my grandfather died in the war. She never smiled much, never showed softness. We all thought she had no gentleness in her at all. He paused, looking out at the dark gardens. Then one day when I was practicing piano, she walked into the room. She was 60 years old. She stood there listening to me play, and I saw something strange in her eyes. Tears. I had never seen my grandmother cry. She asked me if she could try. I was shocked. I had known her my entire life, and I never knew she had any interest in music. What happened? Ronda asked, drawn into the story. I showed her one simple song. Just a few notes like I showed you tonight. And when she played it, something broke open inside her. She sat at that piano and cried for an hour, playing those same simple notes over and over. Later, she told me that when she was a young girl before the war, before all the hardship, she had dreamed of being a pianist. But life took that dream away from her. For 40 years, she buried it so deep she almost forgot it existed. Vladimir's voice grew thick with emotion. She played piano every day after that, until she died 5 years later. She never became skilled. She never learned complicated pieces, but she played those simple songs with more feeling than most professionals I know. Music gave her back a part of herself she thought was lost forever. Ronda felt tears building in her own eyes. That's a beautiful story. It is a true story, Vladimir corrected gently. And tonight I saw the same thing in you. When I looked at you across that ballroom, I saw someone who has spent her whole life being strong, being tough, being what others needed her to be. But I also saw someone who had never given herself permission to be soft, to be creative, to make something beautiful. So I gave you that permission, but why me? Ronda asked. Why not someone else? Because you were brave enough to say yes, Vladimir answered simply. Many people in that room could have accepted my challenge, but they were too afraid of looking foolish, too worried about failing. You walked to that piano even though you were terrified. That bravery is rare. That bravery is precious. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. The party continued behind them, but it felt distant now, like it belonged to a different world. Can I tell you something? Ronda said quietly. When I was playing, something weird happened. I forgot I was in front of all those people. I forgot to be scared. For those few minutes, I was just completely present. Just me and the music and nothing else. I've only felt that way a few times in my life. That is called flow, Vladimir said. Athletes know it. Artists know it. It is the feeling of being completely absorbed in the moment. It is one of the most beautiful experiences a human can have. I want to feel it again, Ronda admitted, surprising herself with her honesty. Vladimir smiled, a warm, genuine smile that transformed his entire face. Then you will. That is the gift music gives to those who are brave enough to pursue it. Not fame, not applause, but those moments of pure presence, pure connection, pure truth. Across the ballroom, people were still talking about the performance. A few guests approached Vladimir and Ronda, wanting to express their amazement, wanting to thank them for the experience. Ronda handled the attention better now, more comfortable with what had happened. But in the back of her mind, she kept thinking about Vladimir's grandmother, about dreams buried and then rediscovered, about the courage it takes to try something new at any age, about the unexpected gifts that life sometimes offers when we're brave enough to accept them. She looked down at her hands again, fighter's hands, warrior's hands, but now maybe musician's hands too. The next morning, Ronda woke up in her hotel room to the sound of her phone buzzing nonstop. She reached over groggily, squinting at the screen. 23 missed calls, 78 text messages. Her social media notifications had gone completely crazy, showing numbers she'd never seen before. What the hell? She muttered, sitting up in bed. She opened her messages. The first one was from her best friend, Ronda. "You're everywhere. Check Twitter right now." Her manager had sent 5 messages in a row. "Call me immediately." This is huge. Every news outlet wants to talk to you, even her mother had texted. "Sweetheart, I just watched the video. I'm crying. I had no idea. Call me when you can." Confused and still half asleep, Rhonda opened Twitter. Her name was trending. Not just trending, but the #1 trend in the entire country. She clicked on it and her breath caught in her throat. The video was everywhere. Someone had recorded her performance at the piano, and it had spread across the internet like wildfire. The clip had already been viewed over 20 million times. 20 million. In less than 12 hours. She scrolled through the comments, her heart pounding. "I've watched this 10 times and I cry every single time. This is what pure human emotion looks like. I don't even like classical music, but I can't stop watching this. Something about it just hits different. The way her hands shake at the beginning, but then she finds the rhythm. This is the most beautiful thing I've seen all year." Ronda Rousey proving once again that she's not afraid of any challenge. From the octagon to the piano. Absolute legend. But not all the comments were positive. Some people were skeptical. This has to be staged. There's no way she just learned to play like that in 5 minutes. Obviously, she knew how to play already. This is just a publicity stunt for something. The music was too simple. People are overreacting. It wasn't that impressive. Rhonda felt a knot form in her stomach. She'd expected the critics in fighting. That came with the territory. But this felt different. This felt more personal somehow. She'd been genuinely vulnerable last night. And now strangers were dissecting every moment, questioning her authenticity. Her phone rang. It was her publicist calling for the 3rd time. "Rhonda, finally," the woman said when she answered. "Have you seen what's happening?" "I'm looking at it now," Rhonda replied. "It's insane." Insane doesn't even cover it. Good Morning America wants you on tomorrow. Ellen's people called. Jimmy Fallon called. CNN wants an interview. Rolling Stone wants to do a feature story. And that's just in the last 2 hours. Rhonda rubbed her temples. "I don't understand." It was just a few simple notes. It wasn't even real piano playing. "That's exactly why people are connecting with it," her publicist explained. "In a world where everything feels fake and manufactured, you gave people something completely genuine. You weren't trying to be perfect. You were just being human. That's powerful." After the call ended, Rhonda sat on her bed staring at her phone. The video kept playing on her screen. She watched herself walk to the piano, saw the fear on her face, saw Vladimir guiding her hands. She watched the moment when something shifted, when she stopped thinking and started feeling. She saw the tears on people's faces in the audience. Maybe her publicist was right. Maybe people weren't responding to the music itself, but to what it represented. The courage to try. The willingness to fail. The beauty of discovery. A text came through from an unknown number. She almost deleted it, but something made her open it. "Ms. Rousey, this is Teresa Chen. I'm a middle school music teacher in Ohio. I just wanted you to know that I showed your video to my students this morning. I have a student named Danny who has refused to participate in class all year. He's convinced he has no musical talent and nothing I say can change his mind. But after watching your video, he asked if he could try the piano. He played his first notes today. You gave him courage. Thank you." Rhonda read the message 3 times, her eyes filled with tears. This teacher had taken the time to find her number and reach out. Because of what happened last night, some kid in Ohio had decided to try something he was afraid of. That meant something. That mattered. More messages came in throughout the day. A woman who was 65 years old said she'd enrolled in piano lessons after 30 years of wanting to, but being too scared. A man who'd given up on his dream of learning guitar picked it back up. A teenage girl who thought she wasn't creative enough for art class decided to give it another chance. The video kept spreading. It jumped from 20 million views to 40 million, then 60 million. News outlets ran stories about it. UFC champion discovers hidden talent. One headline read. The moment that made the internet cry, said another. Ronda Rousey proves it's never too late to try something new, declared a third. But amidst all the attention, Ronda found herself thinking about something else entirely. She couldn't stop thinking about those keys under her fingers, the way the notes had felt coming out of the piano, the strange peace she'd experienced while playing. She wanted to feel that again. She picked up her phone and called Vladimir. She'd gotten his number before leaving the gala. though she hadn't expected to actually use it. "Hello?" His accented voice came through clearly. "Vladimir, it's Ronda. I hope I'm not bothering you." "Not at all, my dear. I have been watching the response to our little moment." "Quite something, isn't it?" "It's overwhelming," Ronda admitted. "But that's not why I'm calling. I was wondering would you be willing to give me actual lessons, real ones? I want to learn to play for real." There was a pause on the other end. Then Vladimir's voice came back, warm with emotion. "I would be honored. But I must tell you, I am not taking new students anymore. I'm too old, too tired. But for you, I will make an exception. Not because you are famous. Not because of what happened last night. But because you asked." Most people who have that experience, they enjoy the moment and then move on. But you want to pursue it. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. They arranged to meet the following week at Vladimir's home in the Hollywood Hills. He would start teaching her properly, from the very beginning. Scales, technique, music theory, all the boring foundational work that real pianists had to learn. After hanging up, Ronda felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Excitement mixed with nervousness. The same feeling she'd had before her first judo competition as a kid. The feeling of standing at the beginning of something new, something challenging, something that might change her in ways she couldn't predict. She looked at her hands again. They were marked with old scars from training and fighting. Her knuckles had been broken and healed multiple times. These weren't delicate musician's hands. They were warrior's hands. But Vladimir had shown her they could be both. That evening, she received one more message that made her stop and think. It was from a woman named Patricia, a nurse from Seattle. "Dear Rhonda, I'm 52 years old. I've spent my whole life taking care of other people. My patients, my kids, my aging parents. I've never done anything just for myself, just because it brought me joy. Watching you sit at that piano, scared but doing it anyway, made me realize something. I've been telling myself I'm too old, too busy, too untalented to pursue the things I dream about. But you showed me that none of that matters. Tomorrow I'm signing up for a painting class. Something I've wanted to do since I was a little girl. Thank you for reminding me that it's not too late. Thank you for being brave enough to look foolish. Thank you for being human." Rhonda saved that message. She would keep it forever, she decided, because it reminded her that sometimes the smallest acts of courage could ripple outward in ways we never expect. That being vulnerable in front of others wasn't weakness. It was strength. That night, before going to sleep, she sat on the edge of her bed and pressed her fingers down on the mattress, imagining they were piano keys. She played through the simple melody Vladimir had taught her, hearing it in her mind. Her fingers remembered the pattern perfectly. She smiled in the darkness. The fighter had discovered she could create beauty too, and she was just getting started. 6 months later, Rhonda stood outside Vladimir's home in the Hollywood Hills, just like she had every Tuesday and Thursday for the past half year. The modern house sat perched on the hillside with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city below. She'd made this drive so many times now that her car seemed to know the way on its own. She pressed the doorbell and waited. Through the glass, she could see Vladimir shuffling toward the door. He moved slower these days. The last few weeks, she'd noticed him getting tired more easily during their lessons. It worried her, but whenever she asked about it, he would wave his hand dismissively and tell her to focus on her scales. "Right on time, as always," Vladimir said, opening the door with a warm smile. Come in, come in." Inside, the house smelled like coffee and old books. Vladimir's grand piano dominated the main room, the same one she'd been learning on all these months. Her sheet music sat on the piano stand, covered with Vladimir's notes and corrections in red pen. "How are the hands today?" Vladimir asked, settling into his usual chair beside the piano. Rhonda flexed her fingers. "Good. I practiced for 2 hours yesterday. I think I finally got that Chopin piece you assigned. Let me hear it then." Rhonda sat at the piano, taking a moment to position herself correctly. Everything Vladimir had taught her came flooding. Back, posture, hand position, breathing. She placed her fingers on the keys and began to play. The piece was infinitely more complex than those first simple notes she'd played at the charity gala. This had dynamics, tempo changes, emotion woven into every measure. Her fingers moved across the keys with a confidence that would have seemed impossible 6 months ago. She still made mistakes. She still struggled with certain passages. But she was really playing now, not just pressing keys. When she finished, she looked at Vladimir anxiously, waiting for his critique. He always found something to correct, something to improve. But Vladimir was crying. Tears streamed down his weathered face, and he made no attempt to wipe them away. Vladimir? Ronda stood up, concerned. What's wrong? Was it that bad? He shook his head, laughing through his tears. No, my dear. It was beautiful. Truly beautiful. Not perfect, no, but beautiful. And more than that, it was yours. You have found your own voice at the piano. Ronda sat back down, relief washing over her. You scared me. I thought you were upset. I am upset, Vladimir admitted. But not because of your playing. I am upset because I must tell you something, and I have been putting it off for weeks now. A cold feeling settled in Ronda's stomach. What is it? Vladimir took a deep breath. I am dying, Ronda. Cancer. The doctors say I have perhaps 2 months, maybe 3 if I am lucky. I have known for some time, but I wanted to finish teaching you before I said anything. The words hit Ronda like a punch to the gut. She opened her mouth but couldn't find any words. Vladimir dying? It didn't seem possible. He'd become such an important part of her life these past months. More than just a teacher, a mentor, a friend. I don't understand, she finally managed. You seem fine. You're teaching. You're walking around. The body is a good liar, Vladimir said gently. It hides the truth until it cannot hide it anymore. But I am not sad, Ronda. I am 78 years old. I have lived a full life. I have played in the greatest concert halls in the world. I have taught students who went on to do magnificent things. And in my final months, I got to witness something truly special. I got to watch you discover music. Tears welled up in Ronda's eyes. This isn't fair. I just started learning. There's so much more you need to teach me. I have taught you everything that matters, Vladimir said. The technical things you can learn from books from other teachers. But the important thing, the soul of music that I have already given you, you felt it that first night at the gala. You feel it every time you play. That is the gift. Everything else is just details. They sat in silence for a long moment. Outside, the sun was setting over Los Angeles, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. I want to tell you why I chose you that night, Vladimir said quietly. It was not random. It was not just for drama or entertainment. When I looked at you across that ballroom, I saw something in your eyes. I saw someone who had spent their whole life proving themselves in one arena, who had conquered that world completely, but who was searching for something more. Something deeper. I saw hunger, not for victory but for meaning. You saw all that in one look? Ronda asked, wiping her eyes. When you are my age, you learn to read people quickly. Life is too short for confusion, he smiled. And I wanted my last great act as a teacher to be something special, not teaching another talented child who would have learned anyway, but giving music to someone who never knew they needed it. That felt like the right way to end my career. You gave me more than music, Ronda said. You showed me that I could be more than just a fighter, that there were other ways to express strength, other ways to connect with people. Do you know how many messages I still get every day from people who watched that video? People who tried new things because they saw me try. People who stopped being afraid of looking foolish. That video, Vladimir chuckled. 150 million views now, last I checked. More people have seen you play those simple notes than ever heard me perform in concert halls. There is something beautiful about that. Something democratic. Music reaching people who never would have attended a classical concert. What happens now? Ronda asked. With your teaching, I mean. Do you have other students? No, you are my last. I stopped taking new students years ago, remember? I only agreed to teach you because you asked so genuinely, because you wanted to learn, not to become famous or to add another skill to your resume, but because you had felt something real and wanted to understand it better. That kind of student comes along once in a lifetime if you are lucky. Vladimir stood up slowly, walking to a shelf lined with old books and photographs. He picked up a small wooden box and brought it back to his chair. I want to give you something, he said, opening the box. Inside was a silver pendant on a delicate chain. This belonged to my grandmother. The one I told you about. She wore it every day after she discovered piano. When she died, she left it to me with instructions. She said I should give it to someone who reminds me of her. Someone who found music later in life. Someone who proved that it is never too late to become who you are meant to be. He held out the pendant to Ronda. She took it with shaking hands. The pendant was simple, just a small treble clef symbol, worn smooth by decades of wear. I can't accept this, Ronda whispered. It's too important. That is exactly why you must accept it. It needs to continue its journey. My grandmother would want you to have it. I want you to have it. Ronda fastened the chain around her neck. The pendant settled just below her collarbone, warm against her skin. Promise me something, Vladimir said. Promise me you will keep playing. Not for fame, not for others, but for yourself. Promise me you will remember that music is not about perfection. It is about truth. About being present in the moment. About expressing what cannot be expressed in words. I promise, Ronda said, her voice breaking. Good. And promise me one more thing. When you have learned enough, when you feel ready, teach someone else. Pass it forward. Find someone who never thought they could make music and show them that they can. That is how this gift survives. That is how we beat death, not by living forever, but by giving something that outlives us. I promise that too. Vladimir leaned back in his chair, looking satisfied. Then I can rest easy. My work is complete. They spent the rest of the evening playing together. Vladimir at his chair, calling out instructions and encouragement. Ronda at the piano, pouring everything she felt into the keys. They played until the sun had fully set, and the lights of Los Angeles sparkled below like a million earthbound stars. When Ronda finally left that night, she stood in the driveway for a long moment, looking back at the house. She touched the pendant at her neck, feeling its weight, feeling the history it carried. 2 months later, Vladimir passed away peacefully in his sleep. The music world mourned the loss of a legend. Concert halls held tribute performances. Famous pianists shared stories of his influence on their careers. But Ronda mourned him differently. She mourned him by playing. Every single day she sat at the piano she'd bought for her home and played the pieces he'd taught her. She played for him, for his grandmother, for everyone who'd ever discovered something beautiful within themselves that they didn't know was there. And 5 years later, when Ronda was invited to speak at a youth center for at-risk kids, she brought a keyboard with her. At the end of her talk about perseverance and courage, she did something unexpected. She called a shy girl to the front, a teenager who'd been sitting in the back with her arms crossed, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. Have you ever played piano? Ronda asked her. The girl shook her head. Good, Ronda said, smiling. Then today is the perfect day to start. And as she guided the girl's fingers to the keys, teaching her those same simple notes that Vladimir had taught her years ago, Ronda touched the silver pendant at her neck. The gift was continuing its journey exactly as it was meant to.